It all began with the beginning, in the very dawn of time and space itself. Out of the ashes of nothingness sprung the world we now know. For he had commanded it. With steaming cup at hands, he created what we now know as the world. He created the jungles, the deserts, the mountains, the oceans, the hills, the plains, the taigas, the Arctic, and many others. To govern these biomes, he created spirits, each in charge of governing its rightful spot in the world. But like all good things, it did not last. For not all spirits had been created equal. As with all inequalities, the victims noticed and were angered. This led to the event that thousands of years later would be referred to as the corrupting. The leader of this event was the spirit of the sands. However, when war broke out, he could not be defeated. To save the remaining biomes, the creation of human came about. But yet they were still no match. Finally, he created gold and gifted it to humans, and the sand spirit was bounded to its biome. This would prove to last, but, like anything, would eventually fail. Along with the creation of such powerful beings, something had to be done to restrain them from using their powers for evil. They needed to have a weakness. So he created the gems. The gems harnessed power from every known aspect of nature and civilization alike. They were created specific to each and every element, from nature and earth to technology and magic. Some of these gems anchored these spirits to their biomes, such as the sand gem restricting the movement of the sand spirit, the nature gem restricting the movement of the spirit of the forests, and so on and so forth. There were nearly 26 gems in total. However, due to the large amount of power these gems contained, they had a peculiar quality to them. They could project their consciousness into a physical form, allowing them to have a physical appearance that they could maneuver with. This also allowed them to fuse with other beings, specifically already physical forms, making humans a prime candidate for fusing. Now, the essence of the spirits were directly tied to these gems, meaning that humans, if they chose, or sometimes even if they didn't, could fuse with spirits of different biomes and aspects of life to enhance the spirit's abilities and that of their own. There once was a kingdom called Sequestria that was established in a land called Minecraftia. Sequestria was a great and powerful kingdom ruled by a great and just king. The king of Sequestria had 4 great warriors who he entrusted a very important duty to. These men were known as the Great Knight, the Great Centennial, the Great Archer, and the Great Wizard. The king ordered these powerful men to guard a massive wall that he had built after several incidents. The wall created a division between the kingdom and the outlying desert. The desert seemed to have strange capabilities, such as having a strange, if not deadly, effect on people who trekked across its dunes. Now, this wall, or the wall, as it was called, could not be a simple wall to battle the magical force propelled by the desert. So the wall was powered by a solitary tower of power as it were. This tower was built by the world's greatest alchemists, architects, and mages. They had designed it to physically transfer energy, which was generated by the rare elements contained in the base and beam of the tower, to the wall. This power that flowed freely from the tower into the wall helped to generate a type of magical and physical barrier between Sequestria and the desert. This barrier prevented the sand from disturbing the citizens of Sequestria for many years. The warriors held the wall for years, and as the years passed, they grew closer to each other, forming great relationships that would preserve forever. The Great Knight was incredibly wise and was world-renowned for his great power. He was appointed as the leader of the group. He was also renowned for starting the great kingdom known as Parliament. The Great Centennial was best friends with the Great Knight, and was also known to possess immense amounts of power. The Great Archer was of course famous for his incredible accuracy. It was believed that he could hit anything, even at 10,000 yards. And the Great Wizard, who proved to be more than a threat, a force to be reckoned with, if you will. With his great and mighty power, he was known in every land for his powerful spells, incredible shows, and strong incantations. As the years passed, the four grew into a sort of family. They knew each other well, and cared a great deal about each other. They were always concerned in others' problems that they shared, and rejoiced in each other's accomplishments. Now, the Great Knight had 3 descendants, all of whom inherited special abilities from their royal lineage. The Great Centennial also had 4 descendants, who would end up helping the Gold King to reign over Parliament. The Greats had a peculiar quality to them. Because of their immense power, they were granted with extended lives, and this power was then passed on to their descendants. The King of Sequestria was a brilliant man. He knew what it took to run and properly control a kingdom, especially one as big as Sequestria. He also knew what it took to defend a kingdom, and he went beyond that, creating contraptions that would be years ahead of rival kingdoms. He would be remembered forever, except for when he wasn't. The world would soon forget him, like a bad dream. He would be forced out of their minds into the oblivion his memory would be cast. Why would he become a bad dream, you ask? Well, that is where the Battle of the Sands takes its place in this story. After many years, the Tower of Power began to lose its prestige with age and wear, resulting in the free-flowing power to become blocked up, as it were. Sadly, no one existed that knew how the tower worked anymore, for they had all passed with the onset of old age. As the tower lost power, the desert only continued to gain. The desert began to realize the wall was losing power, and began to attack in waves. First, the sand began to build itself up, moving itself closer and closer to the wall. Soon, it realized that its movements went unnoticed, and continued its slow, but careful attack. It began to slowly build structures in the sand, as an attempt of intimidation. Having little effect on the guards of the wall, it continued to push its forces towards the wall, creeping up the sides and making moves for its full frontal assault. At this same time, the King of Sequestria was overseeing the wall and the amount of soldiers to spare to the wall. One day, he was called out to inspect the wall and was stricken with absolute horror at what he saw. Little did he know, due to the mere seconds he let his guard down, he opened himself up to the corruption of the spirit of the sands, which would slowly change him into a perfect host for itself. As this took place, the Greats, being the only ones who noticed the change in the terrain, began to devise a plan to push the sand back and stop its assault for good. The Greats worked tirelessly, working together to form a plan that would defeat the sands. However, something troubled the Great Knight. Possibly the biggest question everyone was wondering at the time. Why? The simple question led the Great Knight to search for answers to the question as to why the sand was behaving in such a manner. This great search brought the Great Knight to many lands, kingdoms, forgotten treasure hoards, lost libraries, disembodied ruins, and great sages. Whilst he knew the wall was facing imminent danger, it was more important to find out why the sand was acting the way it was, so the Greats could intervene and stop the sands at its core. After many years of searching, the Great Knight found the answers he so desperately desired. In a place known as the Great Archives, he found the context of the beginning of time itself. It inquired about the creation of spirits that governed each and every biome that existed in the lands of Minecraftia. The book also told of the great event known as the Corruption, an event that changed the world forever. It was the event that split the world into the dark and the light, the good and the evil. He spent many days in the Great Archives, and eventually came back to the wall, and using the great wealth of knowledge he possessed, created the book known as the Ultimatum. The self-writing book that recorded every event that had ever taken place. As far as its existence went, it had the immense power to document the weaknesses and strengths of every living being on the face of the planet. This book became an object of great power and importance. This book knew of everyone and everything that had already happened or was happening at its current place in time. It was the sole source of ultimate knowledge. However, there were some horrible tolls that came with the creation of such a powerful object. Sadly, these tolls were taken heavily upon the Great Knight's shoulders, a weight which he was unable to bear, due to the fact that the Great Knight had to put all of his knowledge into this book. He actually began to go insane. Unable to control himself, he wrote a letter to his son, forgetting, however, to leave it with an individual he trusted, and went out into the desert, and he was never seen again. And his great kingdom of Parliament was left to be finished by those he had entrusted to construct the massive castle, which he had instructed the great Centennial to gift the kingdom to his strongest of his descendants, once he believed they were ready to receive it. Once the kingdom was completed, the Great Knight was given the honorary title of the Great King. It was immediately evident to everyone that the soldier's once valiant leader had disappeared. Soon, order was next to that of a distant memory, as many soldiers broke ranks and went home, leaving the wall more and more defenseless with each passing day. As the wall continued to decay, to the forces of the sands and its defenses fell apart at the seams, the sand saw its chance to act. On the fateful day of All Hallows' Eve, the spirit of the sands decided this would be the day it ended Sequestria. It all started with the king of Sequestria, who no longer existed, walking into the desert, now completely transformed into the villain we now know all too well as Israphel. Israphel walked straight into a large portal made out of ancient sandstone and disappeared. That same night, After Israphel was out of sight, the sand rose out of the desert, making huge tentacles and hands, and slamming itself against the wall. The greats panicked and attempted to rally what troops they could. The wizard ran to grab his spellbook, and as he grabbed it, a note fell out from the Great Knight, as he was still known by. That read, "I have discovered why this is happening and how to stop it. There is a relic at these coordinates, -331, -921, 12. You must quickly retrieve this relic. It is the one thing that can generate enough power to restore the Tower of Power. You must retrieve it before All Hallows Eve." As the sand drove itself through the wall, busting and snapping wood, sending splinters in every direction, blasting stone away, it smashed through towers and guards alike. The great wizard hopped on a horse and left, going as fast as nature could possibly allow, leaving a blazing trail of wind behind him. He sped to the coordinates and retrieved a strange relic, a glowing green gem, seeming to radiate raw power. He took the gem and shoved it in his satchel on the horse and sped back. However, back at the wall, the guards and greats alike were suffering, severely outmatched, unable to do much to push the sand back, beginning to realize nothing can be done. They begin to retreat, ordering the men to save themselves. The great wizard was nearly back at the wall and could already see the smoke and fire in the distance. As he approached the wall, he watched as the greats and guards alike fled. The great Centennial turns to the great wizard and watches in awe and horror as he jumps off the horse and runs straight towards the Tower of Power. Placing the gem on the ground in the tower, the gem begins to release massive amounts of energy in large waves, powering the long, dry tower. The great wizard yells to the men to come back, but the great Centennial looks at him and shakes his head and turns to run. The great wizard remains. He uses every last ounce of his power to push the sand back, so that the wall can repair itself and strengthen itself against the sand. Little does he know, it is too late for him and the kingdom of Sequestria. As the sand rushes him and physically corrodes his body, he winces in pain, but remains strong, as the sand washes over him and the rest of the kingdom of Sequestria, burying the great kingdom in the scorching sands.